Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep into introversion and leadership.
Okay.
We've got Susan Cain's book, Quiet,
Right.
and we're going to really kind of explore, how introverted leaders can bring some strengths to the table.
Yeah, it's interesting. We often associate leadership with those extroverted traits,
Right.
but there's a whole other dimension to
Well,
leadership
sense.
that we often overlook.
And Cain kind of kicks it off
Yeah.
with this story about a Harvard Business School case study.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, the students are presented with this case study,
Hmm.
and they consistently gravitate toward
Yeah.
the most extroverted person in the group as the natural leader.
Right.
But it's like, what happens to the insights
Yeah. What about
from the quieter people?
Yeah, exactly. The quieter individuals, what are they thinking?
Right.
And that's where this whole idea of the bust Abilene comes in.
Oh, tell me about this.
So have you ever been in a situation
Yeah.
where you agree to go along with a group decision, even if you know deep down it's not a good idea?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, like at work or even with friends.
I'm trying to think of a good example.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even like roller coasters, but if everybody's like, let's go to Six Flags.
Yeah. You're like,
Sure.
all right, let's do it.
Even though I'm going to be sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm that person.
And this tendency to just kind of like follow those who initiate action
Right.
can have huge consequences in a leadership setting.
Especially if they're leading us to a roller coaster.
Exactly.
It's-
Nobody wants to puke.
And Cain actually quotes a venture capitalist
Okay.
who's frustrated because so many companies prioritize presentation skills
Huh.
over actual substance.
Oof, that's so true.
And I think that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, how many great ideas have been passed over just because they weren't presented in a slick way?
Yeah, and she talks about this company called Right Solutions.
Okay.
And they use this really cool online idea market.
Okay, so what is that?
So basically, employees can share their ideas anonymously.
Oh, interesting.
So it takes the focus off of, who's presenting and how they're saying it,
Yeah.
and puts it purely on the idea.
So it's like the merit of the idea,
Exactly.
not who said it or how they said it.
Exactly.
That's really neat. I kind of like that.
Yeah, pretty innovative.
Do you think that could work in other places?
I mean, it's definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
By removing the personality, you're leveling the playing field.
You are.
And I think that's really powerful
It is.
because then everyone feels like their ideas can be heard,
Right.
whether you're the loudest person in the room or not.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So we've got this bias towards extroverted leaders.
Right.
But, I mean, Cain's book
Yeah.
is full of examples of really successful introverted leaders.
It is.
Like you think of Charles Schwab,
Yeah.
Bill Gates,
Uh-huh.
Darwin Smith,
Huge names.
who turned Kimberly Clark into like
Yeah.
a big deal. So it's like we're missing out
Yeah, we
on all this potential if we
Yeah.
just focus on, the loud ones.
Exactly. And she brings in Jim Collins' research on what he calls level 5 leaders.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
So these leaders have a really unique blend of personal humility,
Uh-huh.
but also this unwavering professional will.
Okay.
And these aren't necessarily the charismatic,
Right.
life of the party types.
No.
Like he uses Darwin Smith as a prime example.
Oh, really?
He wasn't flashy or super charismatic,
Yeah.
but he had this clear vision.
Yeah.
And he had the tenacity to achieve it. And that's ultimately what led to his success.
So it's not about fitting the mold.
Not at all.
It's about like having the drive
The drive.
and the vision.
The vision.
Regardless of if you're,
Your personality type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like more recently, has there been any interesting research on this?
Yeah, there's Adam Grant's work
Okay.
where he studied how different leadership styles interact with different types of employees.
How interesting.
And what he found is that introverted leaders
Okay.
actually do really well when they have proactive employees.
Okay, tell me more about that. I'm super curious.
Yeah, so he did 2 studies.
Okay.
One was with a pizza chain,
Okay.
and the other involved teens folding T-shirts.
T-shirts. Okay.
Yeah, so in the pizza chain study,
Uh-huh.
the extroverted managers
Okay.
actually saw higher profits when their employees were passive.
Oh, that's interesting.
But when the employees were proactive and really took initiative,
Okay.
it was the introverted managers whose stores performed better.
So it's like they were fostering an environment for their employees to really thrive.
Exactly. They created the space
Yeah.
for them to take ownership.
And that led to better results.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And the T-shirt study had similar findings.
Okay.
The introverted leaders were more likely to listen to suggestions from their team,
That's good.
which ultimately led to higher productivity.
So they're like taking in all this input,
Yeah. Processing it.
processing it, making good decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Grant calls this a virtuous circle
I like it.
where, introverted leaders empower their proactive employees.
Right.
And it creates this really successful and engaged team.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about another leader who, maybe their leadership wasn't as obvious.
Okay.
But it's like Rosa Parks,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Powerful example.
Right. And we all know her for her, courageous act on the bus.
Right.
But it's like all the behind-the-scenes work
Exactly.
that she did for the civil rights movement
Right.
is often forgotten.
Yeah, Cain actually contrasts Parks's personality
Right.
with the stereotypical image of a strong leader.
Right.
She wasn't necessarily this booming voice,
Yeah.
but it was her unwavering commitment to justice
Yeah.
that really fueled her actions.
And it's like a reminder
Yeah,
that impactful leadership doesn't always come in a loud package.
totally.
Right? It can be that quiet strength. Quiet strength.
That really fuels movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she was a catalyst for powerful change.
She was showing that sometimes change comes from unexpected places.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
You never know where it's going to come from. So we think we know what a leader should be,
Uh-huh.
but it's like maybe there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
I mean, even someone like Moses,
Right.
who we always think of as this powerful figure.
Yeah, the strong leader.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe he was more introverted
It's an interesting perspective.
than we think.
Yeah. And some people interpret the Moses story
Okay.
as him being more comfortable with contemplation
Uh-huh.
and, thoughtful communication
Yeah.
rather than being this big public speaker.
Heard is how he's always portrayed.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes me think about Craig Newmark,
Oh, yeah.
who founded Craigslist.
Yeah.
And it's like this huge platform
Yeah.
connecting millions of people.
Totally.
But he's not known for being this,
A big personality.
huge personality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So do you think that the internet has actually opened up
That's a good question.
more opportunities
Yeah.
for introverted leaders to thrive?
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with social media.
Yeah.
Introverts can connect and lead
Right.
in ways that they couldn't before.
It's on their own terms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can take the time to, craft a response
Right.
and share their ideas.
Yeah, and not have to think on their feet so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a more controlled environment.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
So the digital world has kind of
It's like a new avenue
yeah.
for people who don't feel comfortable in those traditional roles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you've got people like Guy Kawasaki and Pete Cashmore,
Oh, yeah.
who are both, super successful entrepreneurs.
Very successful.
And they've openly talked about being introverts.
Yeah.
And it's they found ways to use social media
Right.
in a way that's authentic to them.
Exactly. And it works.
Yeah.
It really does.
But Cain also talks about this tension between all this push for collaboration in the
Right.
digital age
Right.
and the need for solitude,
Right.
especially when it comes to creative work.
Yes. And she tells the story of Steve Wozniak,
Oh, yeah.
the co-founder of Apple.
Right.
He really thrived working independently, even within, this collaborative environment like the Homebrew Computer Club.
I mean, he famously said,
Right.
work alone,
Right. Work alone.
which is kind of a bold statement
It is bold.
coming from somebody who, helped build Apple.
Right.
Such a collaborative company.
Exactly. It shows you how important solitude is
Yeah.
for that deep, focused work.
It's that space to think.
Yeah. And Cain actually cites some studies from Berkeley
Okay.
that found a link between creativity
Uh-huh.
and what she calls socially poised introverts.
Oh, what is that?
So these are people with good social skills,
Right.
but they also really value their independence.
So it's not about being a hermit.
No, not at all.
It's knowing when you need to step back
Exactly.
from the group.
Yeah, to do your best work.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is where the new group think comes in.
Ooh, tell me about the new groupthink.
Well, it's Cain talks about how
Listen.
there's this big emphasis on collaboration.
Right, that's the ideal.
Right.
Yeah.
But it sometimes overlooks the value of individual reflection.
Yeah, and that deep work.
Right. And so it's you see these open office plans.
Yes.
You know.
Open office plans everywhere.
Right. And it's always group projects.
Yeah.
Even when maybe that's not the best way to do things.
Right, sometimes individual work is more effective.
Right. And I've worked in those open offices.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to concentrate
You do.
with all the noise and the distractions.
Yeah, you're constantly bombarded.
You are. And there's actually some research on this.
There is.
DeMarco and Lister's coding war games
Oh, yeah.
found that the most productive programmers
Uh-huh.
actually did their best work
Yeah.
when they had privacy and no interruptions.
So maybe those old cubicles weren't so bad after all.
Right.
Right.
It's about finding the
The
balance
balance. Yeah.
between the collaboration spaces
Yeah.
and the quiet spaces.
Exactly.
And this kind of goes back to deliberate practice.
Oh, yeah. Deliberate practice. Tell me about that.
Well, Anders Ericsson, who's like
Uh,
a leading researcher on expertise development,
Yeah.
says it's crucial for like achieving mastery.
Right. You have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah, you're constantly like
Yeah.
focusing on those areas where you're weak.
Yeah, those weaknesses.
Yeah, it requires a lot of solitude.
It does. It allows for that deep concentration.
Yeah.
And those personalized challenges.
And Cain brings up Steve Wozniak's childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Like he spent hours tinkering
Tinkering, yeah.
alone.
By himself.
And that's how he developed his expertise.
Exactly. Through that solitary exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just being alone.
Right.
It's using that time intentionally
Intentionally, yes.
to like really work on your skills.
Yes. Hone those skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this has implications for how we design workplaces and schools.
Yeah.
You know, Cain says we need a more nuanced approach to collaboration that recognizes the need for both group work
Yeah.
and individual space.
Right. It can't be one size fits all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's got to be, you know, a range of spaces.
You like quiet zones,
Quiet zones,
casual meeting areas,
meeting areas,
individual offices.
individual offices. Yeah. So
Yeah.
people can choose what works for them.
Right. And Cain points to like Pixar and Microsoft
Right, yeah. Good example.
and companies that have done a good job with that.
Yeah, they've incorporated design elements
Yeah.
that balance both, you know, social interaction
Uh-huh.
and those private workspaces.
And what about in education?
It seems like there's been such a big push toward group work
Group work, yeah.
and collaborative learning.
It's important to teach those collaboration skills.
Right.
But we also need to provide opportunities for independent learning
Yes.
and deliberate practice.
Right. And recognize that, like,
Yeah.
not everybody thrives in the same environment.
Not at all.
Right.
Different learning styles, different needs.
Yeah. This whole conversation's got me thinking about, like,
Yeah.
the biological underpinning
Oh, interesting.
of all this.
Yeah.
Like, is there actually evidence
Uh-huh.
that our temperament is, like,
Yeah.
rooted in our biology?
Well, Cain talks about Jerome Kagan's research
Okay.
on high reactive and low reactive infants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so in these longitudinal studies
Uh-huh.
where they followed kids from infancy to adolescence,
Wow.
they found a connection
Okay.
between infant temperament
Uh-huh.
and personality traits later in life.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So those babies who were really reactive to new stimuli, like they would cry easily or move their limbs a lot,
Yeah.
they were more likely to develop introverted traits as they got older.
So you can kind of see it
You can see it early on.
from an early age.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It really is.
Makes you wonder how much is nature versus nurture.
Right.
Right.
It's a fascinating question.
And Cain even shares a personal anecdote
Oh, yeah.
about her struggles with public speaking.
Right. Something a lot of introverts can relate to.
Totally, like that feeling of dread
Yeah.
before a big presentation.
Yeah. The racing heart, the sweaty palms.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's real.
I've been there.
Yeah. And Cain emphasizes that.
Yeah.
Even the most introverted people
Uh-huh.
can learn strategies to manage those anxieties.
Yeah. It's about understanding your tendencies
Absolutely.
and working with them.
Not against them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot in this dive
Yeah.
into introversion and leadership.
A lot of ground, right?
Right. From challenging that extrovert ideal to exploring the biology of it all.
I love it.
It's like introversion is not a weakness.
No, it's not.
And in fact, introverted leaders
Yeah.
have all these strengths that we often overlook.
We do. We really do.
I think we kind of underestimate the
Yeah.
power of solitude,
Yeah.
both for like personal growth
Right.
and for, you know, actually achieving things.
Yeah.
And we've talked about, you know, how important it is for creativity, for
Right.
deep work,
Deep work.
and that we need to be more balanced in
Yeah.
our approach to collaboration. And
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen how people like Rosa Parks,
Mhm.
Moses,
Moses.
Steve Wozniak,
right.
Craig Newmark,
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
all shown us that leadership.
Right.
It's not just one thing,
No.
right?
There are so many forms.
It can be that quiet strength
Coded.
that can be just as impactful
Right,
as
right.
the charisma.
Yeah.
So I guess as we kind of wrap up this dive,
Yeah.
I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what are some ways that we can incorporate more solitude
Good question.
into our lives.
Yeah.
Whether it's for work.
Right. Or just for our well-being.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something to really think about.
It is.
Yeah, maybe it's scheduling time.
Yeah.
Dedicated time for focused work.
No distractions.
No distraction.
Or like finding a quiet space.
Yes.
To just disconnect.
To recharge, yeah.
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 Or maybe it's just like giving ourselves permission
Yeah.
to like step away from the noise.
From the noise, yeah.
For a little bit.
The digital world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've explored a lot
You.
of research,
Mm-hmm.
real life examples.
Real life example.
But I think ultimately it's up to each of us.
It is a personal journey.
Right.
Yeah.
To figure out our own leadership style.
Exactly.
And how we work best.
How you work best.
So wherever you are on that spectrum.
The introversion, extroversion spectrum.
Embrace your strengths.
Yes. Embrace those strengths.
And find ways to use them.
Use them.
To achieve your goals.
To achieve your goal.
And remember.
Yeah.
There's always more to learn.
Always more to learn.
So keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
Keep questioning.
And keep pushing those boundaries.
There's those boundaries.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep diving deep.